The sun was starting its gradual decline beyond the ridges of Willow Brook, coloring the heavens with gentle hues of rose and amber. Tom Carter cleaned the oil from his fingers with a cloth that had known better times, much like the repair shop where he'd labored for the past 12 hours. The Carter's Auto Fix sign dangled slightly askew above the workshop entrance, its paint chipping at the corners a true mirror of how Tom felt lately. At 34, Tom had hoped for more from life then. Battling to keep his dad's garage running, the village was fading. As the new freeway diverted Maastervellers far away, debts mounted higher each month, and the bank had begun mailing those notices, the sort nobody wants to read. He secured the workshop with a weary breath and slid into his aging pickup truck. The motor coughed before starting, a noise Tom understood deeply. He could mend any vehicle that rolled in, yet somehow couldn't fix his own fractured existence. The highway lay bare before him as he drove toward his modest home on the town's edge. The radio hissed with interference between folk tunes, a suitable backdrop to the desolation of the countryside. As he curved around the turn near the forsaken Starling Inn, something piqued his interest. A figure perched on top of it, surrounded by suitcases. Tom eased the truck, curiosity overtaking caution. No one passed through Willow Brook anymore. There was nowhere worth visiting. As he neared, he saw it was a young woman in a cream lace gown, her fair hair glowing in the evening light. She seemed out of place against the worn setting of the shuttered inn, like a glossy image overlaid on a fade snapshot. He pulled over, lowering his passenger window. "You okay, miss? Not many folks stop here nowadays." The woman glanced up, and Tom was struck by her eyes, keen and bright, yet somehow cautious. She observed him briefly before replying. "My ride." "Ditched 'em," she said plainly, pointing to her bags. "I could use a ride to the next town if you're going that way." Something in her tone surprised Tom. It held a refined edge that clashed with her current situation. Against his better instincts, his mother would chided him for picking up strangers. Tom found himself agreeing. "I can get you as far as Brookhaven, about 30 miles from here." Relief swept over her face. "That'd be ideal, thank you." Tom helped load her unexpectedly hefty retro suitcases into the truck bed. As she settled into the passenger seat, he noticed she wore no shoes. Before he could remark, she spoke. "I'm Anneliese, by the way, Anneliese Vale." She offered her hand, and Tom noted its smoothness, free of callous as her roughness, not a laborer's hand like his. "Tom Carter," he responded, briefly clasping her hand before shifting the truck into gear. "What brings you to the middle of nowhere, Anneliese?" She turned toward the window, watching the deserted inn fade from sight. "Would you believe me if I said I was searching for something?" Tom laughed. "In Willow Brook. Unless you're after dirt or disillusionment, you might be in the wrong spot." A faint smile curved her lips. "Maybe I'm seeking something not found where I'm from." They drove in easy quiet for a few miles, the radio now playing a tune Tom recalled from his youth. Anneliese seemed content, gazing at the scenery, the golden meadows, the occasional barn, the vast sky that dwarfed everything else. "Your trucks get personality," she said at last, tracing her fingers along the worn dashboard. "It feels like it's got tales to share." Tom grinned despite himself. 15 years off tales. "This old thing's been more dependable than most folks in my life." "I get that," Anneliese replied softly, and something in her voice convinced Tom she meant it. As they rolled down the quiet highway, Anneliese slowly began to reveal bits of herself, nothing concrete, nothing about her origins or destination, but small insights that made her increasingly fascinating to Tom. She noticed details most overlooked: the unique glow of light through the branches, the arc of a falcon's flight above, the shifting texture of earth as they moved farther from town. "So what do you do, Tom Carter?" she asked as they passed the midpoint of Brookhaven. "I mend things, cars mostly, but anything mechanical folks need fixed." He tapped the steering wheel. "My dad's shop was meant to be temporary after he fell ill, but here I am, 7 years on." "Do you like it, fixing things?" Tom pondered this. No one had posed that question in ages. "I do. There's something straighter about it. Engines don't deceive you. They're either running or not, and if they're not, there's always a cause you can pinpoint and resolve." Anneliese nodded. "Unlike people." "Unlike people," Tom agreed. When they reached Brookhaven South, Tom expected Anneliese to guide him to a specific spot, a friend's place, Amatel, the bus depot. Instead, she seemed fine with just driving. "Anywhere particular you need to go?" he asked. Anneliese paused, a hint of doubt crossing her face for the first time since he'd met her. "Is there somewhere simple to eat in this town? I'd like to thank you for the lift with a meal." If that's not too bold, that's how Tom found himself seated across from Anneliese Vale's diner, the vinyl seat creaking with every move. The server knew Tom had delivered parts to Brookhaven now and then, but eyed Anneliese with open curiosity under the diner's bright lights. Tom noticed the details he'd missed in the truck. Her gown, though dusty from the roadside, was costly. The small earrings she wore glinted in a way that hinted they weren't cheap, and when she ordered, she thanked the server with the natural poise of someone used to buying waited on. "You're not really a hitchhiker, are you?" Tom asked after their meal arrived. Anneliese met his gaze evenly. "What makes you think that? Your bags weigh a ton. You're dressed in what looks like a high-end gown to hitchhike. And you talk like someone who went to schools I couldn't afford to pass by." She smiled, not refuting his observations. "Does it matter where I'm from?" "Guess not," Tom admitted. "But I'm wondering why someone like you is sitting outside a deserted inn in a town most can't locate on a map." Anneliese was silent for a long moment, stirring her foot on her plate. "My father is Vincent Vale," she said at last. The name struck a chord, though Tom couldn't place it immediately. Then it hit him, Vincent Vale of Vale Enterprises, the tech tycoon whose name he occasionally graced the papers Tom used to line his toolbox. "You're running away," Tom said. "It wasn't a question." "I'd rather say I'm running toward something new," Anneliese corrected. "My whole life has been mapped out, watched, and managed the right schools, the right friends, the right job in my father's firm." She glanced at her bare feet. "Even the right fiancé. The wedding's in 3 weeks, and you don't want to marry?" Tom guessed. "I don't want to live someone else's vision off me life anymore," she clarified. "I slipped out during a charity event. No one noticed I was gone for 2 hours. That's when I knew I had to go, when I realized I could vanish from my own life, and it wouldn't make a wave." Tom reflected on this as he sipped his coffee. His own troubles, the failing garage, the growing debts suddenly felt different. At least they were his troubles, his decisions. "Where will you go?" he asked. Anneliese shrugged, a surprisingly relaxed gesture for someone accomplished. "I don't know yet. That's the point, I think. For the first time, I get to choose." After dinner, they stood in the parking lot beside Tom's truck, an unexpected unease between them. The night had turned chilly, and Anneliese wrapped her arms against Theckold. "I should find a place to stay tonight," she said, glancing around. The unfamiliar town. Tom hesitated before speaking. "Look, I know this sounds wild, but I've got an idea. My aunt has a little cabin about 2 hours from her, up in the hills. She doesn't use it anymore. It's not much, but it's quiet and secluded. You could stay there while you sort things out." "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" Anneliese asked, genuine puzzlement in her voice. Tom ran a hand through his hair, wondering the same thing. "Maybe because sometimes we all need a chance to mend our own engines, not just have someone else tell us what's broken." Anneliese smiled, a true smile that lit up her eyes. "That's a good answer, Tom Carter." 2 days later, after settling Anneliese at cabin, Tom returned to Willow Brook and his struggling garage. But something had shifted within him. His troubles hadn't vanished, but they felt more manageable somehow. If Anneliese could leave everything she knew to find her way, maybe he could find strength to make changes too. Over the following weeks, as summer turned to fall, Tom made regular trips to the cabin, bringing supplies and, increasingly, staying for longer visits. They talked about everything and nothing, his dreams of turning the garage into custom rebuilds, her love for photography, which her family had brushed off as a pastime. On one such visit, as they sat on the cabin's porch watching the sunset tint the hills in shades of gold and violet, Anneliese showed him a letter from her father. He'd hired investigators, naturally, but in his way, he'd finally heard her. The letter offered to support whatever path she chose, no strings attached, along with a clumsy but heartfelt apology. "What will you do?" Tom asked, aware of the tightening in his chest. He'd grown used to her presence, to how she found beauty in the simplicity he'd always overlooked. Anneliese reached for his hand, her fingers slicing with his work-worn ones. "I've been thinking about that little shop next to your garage. It'd make a great photography studio, don't you think? Small towns have stories worth capturing too." Tom smiled, feeling something long asleep stir within him. "It needs some fixing up." "Good thing I know Simeon who mends things," Anneliese replied, resting her head against his shoulder as thelest light of day slipped from the sky. In the deepening dusk, Tom thought about the unexpected twists life could take. How sometimes the road less journeyed, the one that seemed like a detour, turned out to be the path you were searching for all along, and how sometimes the people we meet along the way are the ones who help us find our way home.